Welcome back to another episode of The Next Step, the podcast where we share real stories of resilience, adaptation, and overcoming life's biggest challenges. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, bilateral amputee myself, and today's guest has an incredible story of courage from a life-threatening condition that could happen to anyone. My guest today is Debbie Dwyer. One day, Debbie went to the hospital thinking she had a kidney stone. What she didn't know was that she was also septic, a life-threatening condition that led to a month-long coma and ultimately the amputation of both legs below the knee, one arm below the elbow, and part of the other hand. Debbie quickly accepted the loss of her legs, knowing that prosthetics would allow her to walk again. But the loss of her hands was something much harder to accept. How do you function without hands? How do you pick up things, scratch an itch, or do the everyday things we take for granted? Despite all of this, Debbie is now walking with a walker, living independently, and even typing on the computer. She is enjoying retirement, remains positive, and encourages others to seek mental health support when navigating life through limb loss. Today, she is here to share her journey and raise awareness about the dangers of sepsis and the importance of seeking medical help early. Hi, Deb. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
How are things going? What's new in your life these days?
Well, not too much. I am going on a trip this week. I'm going to a musical at a theater, so I'm anxious to go see that and getting on the bus and driving a ways. Yes.
That'll be wonderful. What kind of musical is it?
We're going to see The Waitress.
The Waitress.
I
don't know that. I love going to those shows, though. I've been to several in Toronto here. Have you seen Wicked yet?
I have not. I noticed it is coming out on the streaming services soon, so
yeah.
I'll wait for that.
Okay. Well, listen, again, I appreciate you coming on the show here and telling your story. You have a very unique story compared to some people I've talked to, in the sense that you have lost both your legs, plus part of your arm and your hand. Correct? And recently you just got a new thumb, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's really exciting.
Okay.
So listen, I know that let's just kind of back up and start right from the beginning. You were a school teacher at one point, or a school secretary, right?
Yes.
Working with kids and, very active and things like that. One day you weren't feeling well, and tell me about what happened, like, a bit about your life and then how you got sick.
I was the teacher secretary at an elementary school.
Okay.
So I dealt a lot with students. I did attendance, I did schedules, I did all kinds of stuff. Typed up a lot of letters and so forth. I drove, I went to the library, I went to movies, I went out with friends.
Right.
One day I had a really bad backache and I left work thinking, I've had kidney stones before. This is just another instance of that. And I just need to get home and be able to lay down and I'll be okay.
Yeah, you thought it was a kidney stone,
I just thought it was a kidney stone and it will pass just like all the others had passed.
Yeah. So you're not feeling well and you head over to the hospital at some point.
Well, actually, I called my daughter in Virginia.
Okay.
And she came over. She drove up to help me. She said, I don't know what you want me to do because I'm just beside myself with this pain. So she actually called an ambulance for me. And I remember getting in the ambulance and I don't have much memory after that.
Okay. So, all right. So you think it's a kidney stone, you call an ambulance, you get to the hospital. At what point did they realize that it was a lot more serious than a kidney stone?
Um, as I said, I don't have a lot of memory of this. My daughter, who lives in Massachusetts, who's a nurse, she is my emergency contact.
And was she with you at that time? No.
No, she was on the phone with her sister, and she
Yeah.
was the one who said, "You need to call an ambulance right away."
Oh, that's good thinking.
So she got a call from the urologist that was seeing me, and she basically said, "Your mother has a blockage in her kidney. If I put her on the table, she will most likely die." So she put in a stent in my kidney to try and relieve some of the pressure that was in there. And all my kids came. My son got on a plane in Utah and flew out. My daughter came down from Massachusetts.
Yes.
My sister came. Everybody was there because they didn't know if I was going to make it or not.
And what were they saying was wrong with you? Was it a kidney stone or?
Yeah, I had a kidney stone that was blocking my kidney,
Yeah. Okay.
and so I had gone into septic shock.
Right. And for those, wondering what septic shock, it's really poisoning of the blood, right? It gets in your
Correct.
bloodstream and you get very sick. Um,
Right.
it's a good thing that your daughter called the ambulance because having sepsis, you don't have much time. Like you can die pretty quickly, right?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
When you go into septic shock, there's a good chance you won't survive.
So Deb, at some point you are heavily sedated and you're in that state for about a week. You wake up and what's going on and what's going through your mind at that point?
Um, I know that my hands were black and my fingers were all curled, and I looked like something out of a horror movie. My feet were under the covers, so I didn't see them right away. But you just kind of stare at your hands and think, what happened?
Right.
Why can't I move them?
What are the doctors saying? Are the doctors telling you that your limbs are in trouble?
Not yet, because
Yeah.
they have to address the kidney stone.
Okay.
So they bandage up my hands and my feet, and they send me to a rehab facility that has dialysis. So I go there and I'm in dialysis twice a week because I have to get my kidney function back.
Right.
So I was in on dialysis for about 2 months, and then I started seeing the surgeons at Johns Hopkins,
Okay.
and they determined that I had no blood flow beyond my ankles. I had no blood flow in my left hand at all,
Yeah.
and I had very little blood flow in my right hand.
Right.
Part of the septic shock is that my blood pressure had plummeted, and
Okay.
so in order for them to keep my heart going, they had to take circulation from my hands and feet to redirect it to my internal organs to keep me alive.
Oh, Deb, that's horrible, horrifying. Must have been very scary. I think being sepsis, it attacks all your organs, right? And starts to
Correct.
shut them down.
Correct. It does.
You're very lucky to be alive. Were you in ICU at any point?
I was in ICU for about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Then I was moved to a private room. I had a blood transfusion. Um, but again, all of this is going on, and you're just looking at every time they would unwrap my hands. I
Yeah,
would look at them and I'm like, okay, I just got to move them. I just got to move them, but nothing would move.
right. And that must have been like mentally and emotionally, it must have been very difficult.
Well, you get to that later. Right now, you're thinking, I just don't know what happened to me.
Right, right.
They sent me to this rehab, and um, they're saying, well, we can't do anything until we take care of the kidney stone.
So Deb, did your kidney function come back at some point, and to what degree?
They fully recovered after being on dialysis for about 8 weeks.
Right.
And so then they did remove the kidney stone, and now we deal with my hands and feet.
And what was it, just before we get to your hands and feet, what was it like to be on dialysis?
It was not I was on dialysis for twice a week.
Yeah,
It took, it takes everything out of you. You're laying there for hours while it cleans your blood. Um, I often asked for them to just sedate me when they
yeah,
did this, because you can't move, you can't do anything.
yeah,
And it was just, I would have dialysis for a day, and then I would sleep the entire next day
that's right.
to
Yeah,
recover from it.
yeah. Yeah, I'm on dialysis myself right now, so I know what you're talking about, and I know what kind of experience you have. It takes a lot out of you. The following day, you're pretty tired, and during the treatment, your legs get very antsy, you get achy and cold, and it's not a great experience at all. So let's move on to your legs and your arms. So they're black at that point, but now the doctors are ready to address it. What do they tell you?
First, I went to a vascular surgeon
Okay.
who was trying to determine if I had any blood flow, and I did not.
And is that
So,
because they want to try to save your arms and legs at that point?
well, they didn't know if they could or not, because if
Right.
there's no blood flow, then basically they're dead.
Yeah. And
So I
they
went.
probably knew that too because they were so black at that point. They
Correct.
probably had a suspicion at that point, right? Yeah.
Yes. So I went to see the surgeon at Johns Hopkins, and she did her testing and said the same thing. Your hands are essentially dead, and we will need to remove them. And when you hear that word remove, your brain doesn't register
Yeah.
what that means.
And your heart jumps probably. It's probably,
Oh yes, you just
I know it did for me when they told me that, oh, we have to take your leg. I was like, what? It's really, really hard to take and mentally and just emotionally. You're in you're being told that you're going to lose your limbs at that point. What's going through your mind at that point then?
um, I think I must have cried for 2 days, because I keep thinking, what do you mean you're going to remove them? And for my legs, I had no blood flow beyond my ankles, but they're telling me they're going to cut me at mid calf, and I'm like, why there? And they need enough tissue to come back over to make sure that they have a good cut.
Right.
So I'm losing more of my legs than I had thought. Um, and and with my hands, I'm thinking, what do you mean I'm going to be disabled
Yeah.
for the rest of my life
Yeah.
because of this? And they're like, yes. I'm thinking,
It, it,
your mind doesn't even go there.
Right, and it must be really hard for a doctor to tell you too. I mean, I know they deal with this all the time, but to give that news to somebody must be really tough.
Well, to get it, I had my son there with me, and I was really glad I did, because he was there to support me, and while they're telling me,
Yeah,
hey, we're just going to take your legs and your hands, and we're just going to cut them off.
yeah. It's good that your son was there. You definitely need the support, right?
You do.
Speaking of that, did you have a lot of support? Did your family come together at that point?
um my family was there when I first got sick, um but then everybody's got to go back to their lives. I mean, I was in um a rehab center for months, and they can't just take off work for months to be with me.
Right.
But people were, they would call, and I would talk to them, and they would, my son and my brother would visit, my sister would come. So I had a lot of family support there.
Right.
But it's still, when you're being told you're going to lose your limbs, you just feel so alone, because they're not losing their limbs. I'm losing my limbs.
Right. Right.
And it got to the point where I didn't want anyone to visit me, because they would come and they'd turn the doorknob and they'd walk into the room and they'd walk, and I can't walk. And then
Right.
they would get up and they'd turn the doorknob, and I'm like, I can't do that. And it was so depressing to see, you have people come in and watch them use their hands and stand
Yeah.
up and walk out. And I got to the point where I didn't want people to come visit me.
Yeah, you didn't want to see that, right? Because
No,
it reminds you of what you've lost.
correct.
Now I know must have been hard to like feed yourself and things like that. Did you have to have help for that?
At first I did. I worked with some wonderful occupational therapists who created a strap for my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And even though my hand was completely bandaged, we managed to get this strap over it. Well, the strap was Velcro.
Okay.
And it has a piece on the end, so I could put my bandaged hand in, and I used my teeth to hold the strap and Velcro it over, and I could eat. I could at least feed myself.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And then, so when you lose your legs, you were telling me a few weeks ago that that was easier to accept than it was to accept that you've lost your hands.
Correct. When I went to see the leg surgeon at Hopkins, he said, "You will walk again. I guarantee you, you will walk again." And so he went on about how they have all these innovations for leg prosthetics, and you see people that run in them and do all kinds of
Yeah.
things. And so the legs were like, okay, he said, I walk again, so I'm good with that. But the hands, just, what do you do without hands?
Right. What would have been the hardest thing that you had to relearn then at that point?
Just how to adapt. When I drop something, I have to think about, how do I pick this up?
Right.
And so sometimes I can kick it over to a wall, and I use my head to balance myself, and I can reach over and pick it up. But then once I have it, it's like, okay, now how do I stand back up?
Yeah.
But dropping things, or just simple things. How do you brush your hair? How do you brush your teeth?
Right.
How do you get dressed? These are all things that you really have to think about, where other people just they just reach down and pick it up, where I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't do that. I have to think about, all right, am I going to fall over on my face? Can I go down that far?
Yeah, it's I can't even imagine. I'm thinking about a friend of mine that has gone through the same thing. He got sepsis and lost all four limbs. And when I was talking with him, he said the same thing. Kev, I can learn how to walk, but just picking things up, eating, feeding yourself, scratching your nose if it's itchy, right? We take those things for granted, so it must have been really hard. So you're walking now, right, Deb, and you walk with a walker, correct?
I do.
And you're below the knee, bilateral amputee, both
I am.
legs. Tell me about learning how to walk. Tell me what you had to go through.
I was in rehab or the hospital for about a year, and I went in. This happened in May of 21, and I came back home in April of 22. So I had been in rehabs or a hospital for a year. When I came back, I was in a wheelchair. I could stand for a short amount of time, but I had to have support. I had these wonderful people at the University of Maryland Orthopedic Center at Kernan, and they got me out of the wheelchair. They strapped me to a harness, and I walked around a room. They taught me how to go up steps. They taught me how to take my prosthetics on and off, and they taught me how to get up when I fall.
Wow.
And they still are incredible, because I'm on my third set of prosthetics for my legs. And I've been going back to them because I really want to be able to walk independently. And that's my goal. So with these new prosthetics, I'm steadier and feel more secure. And so that's what we've been working on, is to get me to walk without my walker.
Without any kind of assistance. Yeah.
Right, without any kind of assistance.
Yeah, that's amazing, Deb. That's a good goal to have. I can't imagine falling and trying to get up without any arms or hands. Well, I mean, you have part of your arm, but it must be really a struggle to get up from the floor at that point.
Well, I had to fall in a Chick-fil-A parking lot. I missed the curb and went down in the drive-through lane. And there's nothing there to hold on to get up. So luckily, the gentleman that was waiting for his food got out of his truck and came and helped me up. But it's the humiliation of sitting there on your tush, and you can't get up. And it was just, the people I was with at the time still tell the story about me falling in the Chick-fil-A drive-through lane.
Yeah, and we all tend to fall. Like it's going to happen. It's like um, you trip, you don't have the balance to catch yourself sometimes. So
No.
I am afraid of falling. I've fallen once in my home, but I haven't fallen outside of the whole house. But I expect that I will one day. I don't have my full balance yet, so yeah, I'll probably feel what you felt at that moment in time as well. Sepsis is really misunderstood by a lot of people. There's not a lot of awareness out there, right?
No.
What would you say about sepsis and why it's so important to build some awareness around it? Like how do people even know that they have sepsis?
I really don't know what the symptoms are, but I've met people who have lost their limbs because they had strep throat or because they had a cold. And it's any kind of infection you have in your body. Um, I had a kidney stone, and I've met so many people that have lost their limbs due to a kidney stone, but you never hear about it.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's hard because there really aren't symptoms. It's just what happens when you have an infection and you don't know you have it until it's really bad.
Yeah, and it happens fast. Like when you
Yes.
get sepsis, it's like hours before
Yes.
you could be passed away, right?
Correct.
It doesn't last very long. Listen, physically, we've talked quite a bit about your physical, challenges and what you went through mentally and whatnot. From a mental perspective, like your mental health. How was that during that time? And did you do anything to, get help?
I did. When I was in the rehab facilities, there was a person that would come talk to me once a week. The hand surgeon at Hopkins said the biggest issue they have with amputees is depression.
Yeah.
And so I spoke with a counselor in the rehab facility. And then when I got home, I thought, I can do this on my own. But I couldn't. There's some very dark places you go, and why am I here? Why did I survive this? And people would say, oh, you're lucky to be alive. And I thought, well, I have no hands or feet.
Right.
What do you call lucky?
How can you be that lucky when yeah.
But how is that lucky? So I did reach out to Hopkins, and they assigned me a counselor, a person who specializes in limb loss. And one of the things that she told me that really brought me out of some of those dark places is that you have a loss and you need to grieve that loss.
Yeah.
And if you lost your independence, you lost your freedom, you lost your, I ended up losing my home. You lose so much. And she says, you have to grieve those losses, just like you would grieve the loss of a person.
Yeah, it's like a whole new way of life, moving forward, and your mind is just going through all that. How am I going to do this and live this way? Um, yeah, so how do you manage to stay so optimistic and positive today? What would you say to somebody that's going through this right now that's new to amputation?
Definitely get the help that you need to have someone to talk to. Nobody understands what you're going through unless they've gone through it themselves.
Yeah,
And so it's hard to even talk to family, because they didn't lose their limbs,
right.
and they don't quite understand what you're going through. But get the help you need, and some days are going to be better than others, but you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. They keep coming up with innovations every day that will help with amputees.
Yeah. You said a couple things there that were intriguing to me. One was about connection. I really believe that connecting with people that have gone through what you're going through, or an amputation, maybe it's not all four limbs or whatever, but you connect with other people and you hear their stories, it can be really therapeutic. And even this podcast, by telling your story, you're actually helping people because they may be going through the same thing, but in an earlier stage.
Right.
Yeah. So what's life look like for you today? Like, what's a typical day that you have?
I live in an assisted living facility. I have trouble getting myself dressed, and I really don't want to live off of microwave meals all my life. So I am in a facility where I get 3 meals a day. I
Okay.
have someone who helps me get dressed in the morning, and that's pretty much all they do. And then at night, they wash my liners, and
Yeah.
I get very little. I don't need a lot of assistance, but I need some.
Yeah, you're pretty
So, and
independent. Yeah.
I try to be as independent as I can, but I just can't seem to manage some of the clothing. So they help me get dressed in the morning.
Yeah.
Here they have lots of activities where you can go to talks, you go on trips. That's how I'm going to this theater to see a play. They have the people here are like family.
Right.
This and they are very they are much. I don't know how to say this without, but they really build me up because they're like, oh, you're so awesome. I can't believe what you're doing, and
Yeah.
um, they're very supportive. So you kind of get positive. You have to be positive there because what's your alternative? You can lay in bed and say, oh, woe is me, but that's not going to be very
Not going to do you
helpful.
any good, right?
No.
Yeah, I shared a room with another amputee in my rehab, and I got dark too, and depressed and whatnot. And one day he recognized that I was in that mode, and he said, "Kevin, like, what do you why stay there? Like, it's not going to do you any good. Just get on with things." And be grateful that you're alive, because a lot of us that have gone through limb loss came very close to losing our lives as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a whole different perspective. It gives you a new perspective on life, and it makes you much more grateful for things.
Yes, it
Um,
does.
The other thing, Deb, that you said just a moment ago, and I want to drill into it a little bit more, is you said that people kind of elevate you and say, "Hey, you're a hero and you're doing so well. Look at how awesome you are." How do you feel about that when people do that and say that?
I feel pressure because I don't feel awesome. I don't feel like a hero. I feel like I'm just getting through the day like everybody else.
Yeah,
I don't feel special. I don't, you get these comments and you think I'm just trying to get through the day. That's all. And
yeah,
so it's tough because then you feel like you have to maintain this positivity and this upbeat attitude because everybody's expecting that of you.
yeah. You might just
But
be in a bad mood and tired or whatever, and it's
or some days it just hurts.
yeah, and
Some days your limbs just hurt. And I think I don't want to leave my room because I'm going to run into somebody and they're going to be, oh, what's wrong? And I'm thinking,
yeah.
nothing. I just hurt.
Yeah, and often they will immediately reference that it's your limb loss that's getting you depressed or down,
Right.
hurting, and it might not be that. It might be that you're just physically tired from
Hmm.
things, right? If you had to give somebody some advice, and they're just going in and getting their limbs, losing a limb or they've just lost a limb and they're struggling, they're in a dark place, what would you say to them?
I would definitely recommend reaching out and getting help because I think having someone to talk to makes a big difference.
Yeah,
It really and truly does to have and to find a connection. I found a young lady. Her father was a substitute at my school,
right,
and I found out she was a quad amputee. So I would call her a lot. Oh my gosh, this is happening to me. She goes, yes, this is this is a what's going to happen to you. Oh my gosh, my hands hurt so much. Yes, they will. You're going to make sure you ask for a different kind of pain medication. So
right,
she kind of got me through this. And at one point, I asked her, how long did it take you to accept what had happened to you? And she said 7 years.
wow,
And I thought, really? And now that I'm 3 years into this, I think, yeah, I can see that. I can really see that.
yeah.
And she was the one who also told me, get therapy, because you can't do this on your own. This is not something you can do alone.
You feel phantom pain at all?
Um, I feel all my fingers on my left hand, even though there's no hand there.
Wow, that's
Um,
hard to
it,
describe to somebody, right? When you feel that, but somebody that hasn't lived it, you can't describe that feeling.
no, I feel like I'm holding on to a stick, like my
Right,
fingers are curled around the stick, and my thumb is I like jammed my thumb, and that's what it feels like. But there's no fingers there, or my ankle will itch, and I'm thinking, but I don't have an ankle,
right.
but it itches.
Yeah, and you don't have hands and you don't even have fingers. So you have a bit of a thumb, I think, and
Right.
you can type and whatnot with
I
it.
have one of the things I could move was um, my pinky. I
Okay.
could move my pinky. So when they cut me off at the lower knuckles. So I have a palm, and then I have this pinky that I can move, and
Okay.
that's what I use to type, and that's what I use my iPad and my phone, and I also use a lot of the adaptive technology. I use Siri a lot.
Yeah.
I have an Alexa that controls the lights in my room. My kids set up for me,
Oh, that's
so
great.
I use a lot of the technology that's out there, and I use my pinky for typing.
Yeah. How do you Do you ever go out on your own, Deb, and venture out?
Not entirely on my own because I can't drive.
Right.
I've been out with um, like another resident. We went to bingo one night, so she picked me up. We threw my walker in the back seat, and off we went. Um, I've gone on trips with the facility here. Um, we went to the National Cathedral last week. Um, I've gone out with my children. So is they just throw the walker in the back seat or in the trunk, and there I go.
Well, that's incredible. Like, you're so independent. You are an inspiration, Deb. But I look at you and I think I've lost my legs, and I struggle sometimes. But I look at you and you're just living your life and moving on with things, and you seem to be doing incredibly well. So, I just can't say enough how inspiring you are.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
is there
But
any?
you know, any loss, any limb loss is still a loss,
Yeah.
whether it's one leg or both legs or one arm or both. It's still a loss, and that doesn't make it any less because it's not all four.
Yeah, yeah. Before we kind of wrap up, you had mentioned that you just got a thumb. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Um, as I said, I have a palm, and my thumb is shaped like my thumb is shaped like a volcano. So they couldn't put anything on it to give me accessibility.
Right.
So my prosthetist recommended I do osseointegration, is where they put a rod into the bone and
Yeah.
then they attach a prosthetic to it. So in October, I had the operation where they actually put a dental implant into my thumb. And then I have a pin that sticks up, and that's what they've attached a thumb to.
Okay.
And so I just got it recently. I have my beta tester.
Yeah.
So we're working on getting me. I mean, I can move it. I can move the thumb around. I can't bend it or whatever. So they're working on getting me um, something that will let my right hand function.
Right.
And then they're getting me static fingers, so I have like robotic fingers, but
Oh,
I can move them so that I can pick something up, and then the fingers you push all the way down and they snap back up. So it's a journey, and
yeah.
we're all learning together what works and what doesn't work. At first, he said, "Well, there's this itty bitty screw that you know is you unscrew that and you can take it off." And I said, "Did you not see my other hand? I'm not doing an itty bitty screw."
Right.
So they put a magnet on the end,
Okay.
and so I can put the prosthetic on, and the two magnets connect, and it stays on. And then to take it off, I just put it under my chin, and I can pull it off.
Okay.
Because I said you have to make it so I can take it on and off myself.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on with the osseointegration team at Hopkins, is to
Yeah.
create basically a hand for me.
It's really a journey, and through all of these things, your prosthetics, even your legs, you have to keep going back if they're not working
Right,
correctly. And
right.
yeah, it's constant battle. Listen, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to mention before we wrap up?
Now, I just thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story, because you every now and then you meet people, and it's so important to know that you're not alone. You meet people then say, "I had a kidney stone," and they're like, "Oh, so did I."
So did I.
And you meet people that there if you have five amputees, you will have five different cuts. I'm not out on my own. There are people out there who are just like me.
Yeah, yeah, really important. Otherwise, you feel so isolated. Well, Deb, you're not alone. You have a lot of friends in the amputee community. I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's an incredible story. I think people will really benefit and get value out of hearing some of the things that you've brought up today. And I really appreciate talking with you.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Kevin.
Deb, your story is a reminder of how quickly life can change, but also how capable we are of adapting and finding new ways to live. Your openness about your experience, from the physical challenges to the mental health side of recovery, is going to help a lot of people out there who may be struggling. Thank you for sharing your journey with us today. For those listening, if you take one thing away from this episode, let it be this: sepsis is serious, and early intervention can save lives and limbs. There are symptoms to watch out for, and if you have them, don't wait, seek medical help. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to The Next Step and share this podcast with someone who might benefit from it. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more inspiring stories from people in the limb loss and limb difference community. Thank you for joining us today, and as always, remember, every step forward, no matter how big or small, is a step worth celebrating. Take care, and we'll see you next time on The Next Step.